person. So when a pedestrian ignored street signs, he was referred to as a, any guesses? Jaywalker, right? Did you know that Alaska is the only state that can be typed on one row of keys on a keyboard? Go ahead and do it in your head because you're doing it right now. You're wondering about it. Did you know the only number whose letters are in alphabetical order when written is the number 40? F-O-R-T-Y. You'll think about that one for a while too. In 1991, Wayne Allwine, the voice of Mickey Mouse, married Russi Taylor, the voice of Minnie Mouse. All right, is that not the greatest ever? And then how about this one? The same person who sang "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" was also the voice of Tony the Tiger. It all makes sense now, doesn't it? You're like, I knew that voice. There are a lot of random facts out there. I love learning just random trivia because at times, to me, it can seem like life can be random. You know what I mean? Have you ever heard somebody say they were in the right place at the right time? I've found some pictures that are random pictures. The person just took it, and yet some pretty amazing things happened in those pictures. Random, but they were in the right place at the right time. So let me show you some of these pictures. Here's one. You can't read the back of their shirt. Can you see it? Cookie Monster. Right? How awesome is that? Completely random, but it's a childhood character that a lot of us remember. All right, how about the next one? The license plate says "one ear up." Look at the dog. That's something, isn't it? All right, how about this next one? He says, "Had this shirt for 2 years. Always wondered why the sleeves were black. Then I met this man at my college." Do you see what it is? They've got the exact opposite shirt on. Man, these guys should be best friends. All right, how about this one? I love this. This is a hotel this lady's staying in. Look at her shirt. It matches the hallway of the hotel she's staying in. Lady, she has got it going on, doesn't she? All right, how about this one right here? This guy found this picture in a thrift store. It looks just like him, doesn't it? I really want to know if that was like a long lost uncle or something like that. All right, just a couple more. You see what's happening? They snapped the picture just before that wave splashed over top of her. So it looks like she's got an ocean blanket. Man, right place at right time. Totally random, but man, that's pretty cool. All right, how about this one? Big man, little hat. That's actually behind him on the wall in a subway station, but it looks like he's wearing this tiny little hat. And here is my absolute favorite. Check this one out. It may take you a minute. You notice the lady on the left. Look at the guy on the right. It's like he has that lady's body now, right? Isn't that it's totally random, but how unusual is that? I know if you're like me and you think about life can seem to be very, very random. Things just seem to happen. And I thought things like this. Why are there some men that are blessed with a six-pack and most of us are blessed with a keg? You ever thought about that? Why is that? I thought about why can some women have perfect hair, not one hair out of place, right, ladies? And others go out in public and look like they've been through an F5 tornado. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Why is it that some people can eat a dozen donuts and not gain an ounce? If I look at a donut, I gain 3 pounds, right? Why do those random things happen to people? But seriously, there are some serious things that we need to think about. Why is it that some people get the really, really good jobs? And it seems like other people just get the leftovers. Why is it that some people are born in a great country like the United States of America and other people are born in countries like India and Africa where they struggle their entire lives? Why is it that it seems like some people are always financially secure? They never have to want for anything. They've got it all while others struggle to make it every day. Why is it that some people are perfectly healthy while other people are sick? And why is it that some people live to be 100 years old and others die very, very young? See, if we start thinking about life and we see the randomness in it, it can make us wonder. It can make us begin to question. In fact, it can drive us a little bit crazy if we allow it to. And so we want to talk in this series, we're going to do this over the next 3 weeks, called A Random Christmas. Because when you look at Christmas, it can seem very, very random, the story. Because it seems like it's a pretty random time. Why did God choose when He did for Jesus to come? It can seem like a random place when you think about Jesus being born in this sleepy little town called Bethlehem. And then Mary seems like a pretty random girl, just maybe her name drawn out of a hat, when you wonder, why did God choose her? And so I want us to look at each one of those, and I believe we can learn a lesson from each one. Today we're going to begin by talking about a random time. Because have you ever thought about why did God send Jesus when He did? If you were to look in the Bible, you have the Old Testament and the New Testament. The last book in the Old Testament is by a prophet named Malachi. And after that letter was written, that book was written, God did not speak for 400 years. So when you get to the New Testament part of our Bible, and you get to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that didn't happen for 400 years. So from the Old Testament to the New Testament, God doesn't say anything. He's just quiet. He doesn't speak through prophets. He doesn't speak through writings. Some people call it the silent period in our history. Now, can you imagine what the Jews were thinking? God had been just an integral part of their lives, of their existence for all of those years, and then all of a sudden He stops talking. They might have wondered, man, we really made God mad this time. You know, we made Him mad in the past, but He always came back. But maybe we made Him too mad. Maybe God doesn't love us anymore. So can you imagine being in that place wondering why God was so silent for so long? See, I believe He was waiting for just the right time. Will you turn back with me to Galatians chapter 4? We read that at the beginning because we wanted to get your minds going the right direction, and I believe that this verse is going to set us up as we go through not only our message today, but as we go through the Christmas season. Galatians chapter 4, and we're going to pick it up again in verse 4. And look for God's timing in this. Galatians 4, beginning in verse 4. But when the set time had fully come, God sent His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Okay, those two verses talk about why Jesus came, so that our relationship with God could be fixed and could be repaired, so we could be sons and daughters of God. But it's the very beginning part that I want us to concentrate on this morning, because He says, when the set time had fully come. Have you ever wondered what it was that made that time right? Why God had to take 400 years between the Old Testament and the New Testament to make sure that the time had fully come, that the time was exactly right? Well, He was using that time to make some preparations. And I want us to look at a couple of preparations that He made today that you may on the outside look at and go, well, it's probably not a big deal. But then when you really look at it, you go, wow, that makes a lot of sense to why He would send Jesus at that time. First thing I want us to look at is the preparation of language. Okay, 300 years before Jesus was born, a man by the name of Alexander the Great came to power. He consolidated all the Greek city-states into a powerful empire, and within about 12 years, he had conquered the entire known world. And because of that, the Greek language became a universal language to where everybody in that part of the world, in the known world, they spoke Greek. So for the first time since the Tower of Babel, I don't know if you remember that story back in the first part of Genesis, God made people speak all different kinds of languages, and He spread them all out. And so people could not communicate with each other if they lived in different parts of the world. But in this part of the world, there was a universal language called Greek, and so everybody could talk to each other. Now, you may go, well, what's the big deal with that? Well, one of the things is the Old Testament was translated into Greek. so that they could know how God had worked through the Jewish people and all the things that God would talk about to not only those people, but to us as well. And then later on, the New Testament, parts of it would be written in Greek. And so it's important that the people knew this language because the message that God wanted to send could go to not only royal people, but just normal, common folk. Now, that language was a very precise and beautiful language so that the things that were written could be very specific so people could understand exactly what God's message was for them. Now, here's the interesting fact. The beginning of the 2nd century, okay, we're talking about 200 AD. At the beginning of that century, Greek ceased to be spoken. It became a dead language. Now you may say, what is the big deal with Greek being a dead language? Well, that locked into place the meaning of the words in Greek. Okay, that's a big deal. So no longer would the words change meaning over time. And well, it could have meant something when they wrote it in biblical days, but it could mean something totally different to us now. No, it ceased to be used. It's a dead language. Meanings do not change. Now, you and I speak English, and it is a living language, which means the definition of words change all the time. If you don't believe that, let me explain to you how I know. When I was growing up in high school, we began to say, man, that's bad. That car is bad. That girl is bad. That outfit is bad. And our parents are like, I think they're really nice. What is wrong with that person or that car or that outfit? What we meant was, it was good. So no longer did bad mean bad. Bad meant good. And my parents scratched their head. They were like, what are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. Well, move on down through time. Then we start saying things were sweet. Sweet. Oh, man, that's sweet. Man, that motorcycle right there, that is sweet. And we would say that, and it had nothing to do with the flavor of a motorcycle. It had to do with, we really liked that motorcycle, and so it's sweet. And my parents were like, I'm totally confused. I thought it was bad. No, it was bad. Now it's sweet. Okay, and then you even move forward more, the word sick. If you hear people go, man, that is sick. Man, that girl, she's sick. That guy, he's sick. It has nothing to do with them having a stomach flu. That means you like them. You like who they are. And so now we're going from bad to sweet to sick. And my parents, their heads were swimming. And I thought, come on, Mom and Dad, get with it. Until I became the father of 2 teenage girls. And now I am realizing that there's a language out there that I don't understand. And I have to ask my children to explain things to me. If one of our teenagers says, that's my bae, anybody have any idea what that means? It's B-A-E, before anyone else. So it's not my girlfriend, that's my bae. It's not my boyfriend, that's my bae. It's not my best friend, that's my bae. And so I had to learn. I didn't know what that meant, but now I know exactly what that meant. If a teenager says, and you hear them say, man, I'm dead, don't worry. They're not sick. Something bad's not getting to happen to them. That means something is hilarious. She said, when I asked Maddie about this, she said, that means I'm weak. Okay, again, it's not a fever. It's not a cold. It means it's funny. So when they hear something funny, they go, I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm like, that's what I used to say when I was late for curfew, right? I'm dead because my parents are going to kill me. But it means something totally different. If you hear a teenager say, man, you're capping. You might have any idea what capping is? Me, I think you're wearing a hat, right? It means you're lying. If you're capping, you're lying. See, I feel like I'm educating y'all. Y'all ready for this, right? But my absolute favorite that I heard was a teenager will look at a couple or 2 people and they'll say, I ship that. I was like, first of all, I said, what did you say? And Maddie said, oh, I ship them. I was like, what in the world are you talking about? Well, I'm saying they should be in a relationship together. I'm like, why don't you just say that? Like they should date or something. Well, because dating doesn't mean what dating meant when I was growing up. But she'll say, yeah, I ship them. And let me tell you what I mean. Amanda's got a cousin who is in the military in Texas. Maddie decided that her teacher, that she has one of her teachers at Magnet High School, needs to be shipped with Colin. And so she is sitting in class, okay, you remember this? She's sitting in class with her phone, holding her phone up beside her teacher's face. And her teacher goes, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm just making sure you and my cousin look good together. Because y'all should be in a relationship." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So, if you hear a teenager say, "I ship that," that means they think people ought to be in a relationship together. We have a living language called English. It is changing all the time. So we have no idea what the meaning of words are as the years go by. So can you imagine if the Bible had been written today? Then you would have no idea when God says sin is bad. People would be like, "Oh, he means sin is good." You know, and so it was written, the Bible was written, the message first came out in a language that ceased to be spoken. It was dead, and so the meanings never changed. So what it meant when it was written in the New Testament, it means today. Those meanings do not change, and so we can study Greek and figure out what words mean. Pretty interesting, huh? See, God was using time to prepare the language of the people that he was going to send his son into their world. But it was not only the language that he was preparing, but he was actually preparing the political climate. He was preparing the world system. In the century before Jesus was born, Rome ruled most of the world. But most of the time, they were in civil wars because military leaders would come and go. They would try to get power. And so there was all of this strife that went on. But in 30 BC, 30 years before Jesus was born, a man named Augustus Caesar came to power. And he was able to settle all of that out to where there was peace in Rome. In fact, it was called the Pax Romana. There was peace within the whole empire of Rome. They didn't have to worry about wars. They didn't have to worry about internal civil affairs and those kind of things. And because of that, some things were able to happen in that culture, in the Roman Empire. For instance, there was a pretty awesome road system put into place. So you could travel freely throughout the Roman Empire. In fact, there was an expression that said, "All roads lead to," y'all know what it is? Rome. That's why, because they had this integrated road system where you could travel anywhere that you want to. But it was not only a road system, but they had a very efficient postal system. It may even been better than the postal system today. I don't know. But they had one where they could send letters back and forth all over the Roman Empire. So ideas and thoughts could be passed from person to person. So you've got roads, you've got a postal system, and Christians, after Jesus was crucified, buried, raised again, went back to heaven, and the church began, they were able to use the roads and postal system to get the Word of God to all the known world. Isn't that pretty amazing? I think that's an awesome thing that we see. You see, it's not that God was not working, it's God was working behind the scenes to prepare people so that they were ready for the coming of Jesus. Now, roads and a postal system are going to cost money. And if governments want to pay for something, where do they get the money? There you go, taxes. That's where it comes from. Luke chapter 2 and verse 1, it says this, in those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that the entire census should be taken of the entire Roman world. Caesar Augustus, the one that brought peace to that area, said, now I want a census to be taken so that I can tax the people. And that's why Joseph and Mary went to a little town called Bethlehem. Because that's where Joseph was from. Pretty interesting how God uses all kinds of people to make sure that his plan gets working. So God used that 400 years to prepare language so people would understand the story of Jesus. He used it to prepare the world system. There were roads, there was a postal system. All of this could be used so that the message of Jesus could get out. But maybe you're saying this morning, what in the world does that have to do with me? When it comes to thinking about time and time being random, what does all that have to do with me? Well, I want you to think about this. Maybe in your life you go, the events of my life are completely random. I don't understand why God does what he does. In fact, I wonder if God's working in my life at all. Maybe you're saying, you know what, I haven't heard from God in a long time. Or maybe you say, I don't think I've ever heard from God. So is it that God's being silent? Does God just allow random things to happen in our lives? Is it just all chance? I don't believe so at all. In fact, I want you to understand, I don't believe that God's silence is equal to God's absence. Okay, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe just because God is silent on an issue or on a need that you have, that means he's absent, that he's not looking at what's going on in your life. I believe he's absolutely a part of our lives every day. But here's the thing. Maybe it's not our time yet. When we pray to God and we ask God about things, and would you give me this? Would you fulfill this need? Would you answer that prayer? And then God doesn't answer it. We say, well, God's silent. God's not saying anything. God's not paying attention. But the thing is, you may not be ready for God to answer that prayer yet. Now listen, this is going to be hard, but I need you to listen to me on this. It may not be time for you to be married yet, or to have a baby. It may not be time for you to get that job that you desperately want, or that promotion. It may not be time for you to be healthy, or for you to be healed. See, the thing about God is God sees all time. It's existed forever. Time did not have a beginning. It won't have an end. It just goes. And God can see it all. And so he may realize it's not time for me to answer that prayer yet. Because you're not ready for it. You're not ready for my blessings. You're not ready for that challenge. And so I'm going to hold off. It doesn't mean he's not listening. He may just know that it's not your time yet. You're not ready. So let's think about it this way. If God gave you everything you wanted, exactly when you asked for it, and your life was perfect, would you need God anymore? I'm serious. If your life was exactly the way that you had dreamed it would be, there are no problems, there's no issues, there's no difficulties, there's no struggles, would you need God? How much of a part would God be in your life? See, I think sometimes God withholds things because he knows if they get it, they're going to turn their back on me. If I bless them with that, if I put them in that situation, then they're going to go, I don't need God anymore. I've got everything taken care of. You see, I believe sometimes God doesn't answer our prayers. Things can seem random in our lives because it's not our time yet. But it may come later. I don't know if you're like me, but there have been times that I've looked and went, wow, God answered my prayer here. I sure am glad he didn't answer it there. Because my life would have been totally different if he'd answered it there. So sometimes it's just not our time yet. Doesn't mean God's not listening. Doesn't mean God's not working. He's just telling you to wait. But there's one other thing I need to mention. And this might be the hardest thing of all. Sometimes it may not be your time ever. Because you may pray, you may have a desire of your heart. There may be something that you feel like God is supposed to do, and it's just not ever going to be your time. Because it's not within God's will. I think that's the hardest time we have to trust God. Because you may have prayed about it for years and years and years, and either it's silence, or you just feel like God is saying no. And you don't understand why. Because I look at those people over there, and they've got their lives together. They've got everything that they want. Their lives are absolutely perfect. Why can't my life be perfect? Why can't my life be more like their lives? And it may be that God knows it's just not going to be your time, because that's not in my plan for you. And boy, that's difficult, isn't it? When you walk with families through infertility, and they so desperately want to have a child, and it's hard to realize that may not be in God's plan. Or to walk a path of singleness with somebody. They're like, I don't want to be single. I want to be married. I want to find somebody. Why can't I find somebody? Maybe God has another purpose in store. Or maybe you'll go through life and you look at it and you go, you know what? I have struggled financially my entire life. Why in the world can I get some of the money? Maybe God knows money would pull you away from Him. He says, no. It's not what you need. More than money, more than being married, more than even a child. You need me. It's hard when God says it's not going to be your time. Especially when it's a sickness, right? An illness. And maybe you've prayed over and over, God, please take this away from me, from this person that I love. I need you to take that away. I know you can heal. I need you to heal them. But it may not be their time. They may get healed one day, or God may bring them home and they're healed forever. To never have another illness or pain or sorrow or shedding tears. It's hard, isn't it? When it just doesn't seem like it's going to be our time. But it's in those moments that we have to trust God. Because I believe this. This is the thing that I want you to get from today. I believe that God's timing is perfect, even when we don't understand it. I believe that with every part of my being. It's not easy to always believe that. I've gone through struggles in my life, and I was like, God, are you sure you know what you're doing? But I believe God's timing is always perfect, especially when we don't understand it. And that's when we have to trust in Him. Listen to Lamentations for chapter 3, beginning verse 25. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in Him, to the one who seeks Him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Boy, that's tough though, isn't it? But He tells us God is going to be there, and it's good to wait, because God's salvation will always come when we ask Him. It may not be exactly what we want or in our time frame, but God's timing is always perfect. You go back to Galatians chapter 4. He says, at just the right time. When the set time had fully come, God sent His Son for each one of us, so that we can have a restored relationship with our Heavenly Father, who loved us enough to send Jesus to die in our place. God's timing is perfect, even when we don't understand. Would you bow your heads and pray with me? Father, it's not always easy to understand your purpose or your timing or why you do what you do. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that you're just not there, you're not speaking, you're not working. But I pray, Father, that we would come to a place where we could always trust in you. That we would know that you're working whether or not we understand it. That you're working even if the time frame doesn't seem to work for us. Father, you sent your Son Jesus at just the perfect time. And we thank you for that gift. And I pray, Father, that as we go through our lives, that we'll see the gift of Jesus not as a one-time event, but something that can take place in our lives every day. So, Father, please speak to our hearts so that we can hear your voice this morning as you tell us, I'm in control. I'm working for your good, and I love you. Thank you for this time, Father. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. privilege every Sunday to be able to come together to think about the gift that was given to us, that is Jesus Christ. The greatest gift ever given to mankind. And so that's why we have a time in our service to remember that gift. We've got men that are going to come forward in just a couple of minutes, and they're going to serve bread and juice to you. The bread represents Jesus' body. The juice represents his blood that was given so that you and I could have life, so that our sins could be forgiven. That's why we do this every Sunday, so that we never forget. You don't have to be a member of Rich Acres. If you're a believer in Jesus, we welcome you to take with us. The men will pass it out. You can take it as it comes by, and you can put your cup back in the tray. Or if you want to hold it for a couple of minutes and then take it, you can do that as well. And you can just put your cup in the back of the pew in front of you. But we want this time to be about you and your relationship with God. Maybe you need to tell God today, God, I trust you. I don't understand your timing, but I trust you because your timing is perfect. Just talk to me. And be sure to thank him for the gift of his son, Jesus. So I'm going to invite the men to come forward now, have a seat on the front pew, and after we sing this song, then we'll have our communion time.